Hi Arnavi, welcome to An Hour with LawSikho. We are very late because of some equipment failures. It's 4:22, so we are very sorry to anybody who's watching this still who have stayed back to watch it. But I think we don't have anybody to watch it right now because people waited. So, but anyway, we will spread the word, and I hope some people will join. And anyway, the conversation will be available on YouTube for others to see later on. Oh, we have
Right.
some viewers. We have 3 viewers right now. Okay, welcome
Oh,
everybody. And so we are going to start talking about career in maritime law, which is obviously a very interesting area. And I personally, when I was in law school, always thought and considered if I could have a career in maritime laws, and I even
I see.
interned actually with a shipping lawyer who did a lot of shipping arbitrations in Mumbai, and I
I
found it
see.
quite interesting. But to be honest, I
Mm-hmm.
never quite figured out how this career works and
Mm-hmm.
what this is all about. But before we
Right.
delve into all of that, Arnavi, why don't
Mm-hmm.
you tell us about yourself a bit more? Like, what's your background, academic and professional background?
Right. Okay. So, academically, I'm of course an alumni of ILS. Uh, uh, of course, I finished my LLM in Singapore in maritime law. Now, the reason I chose maritime law was chiefly because, by way of a background, my father is a shipping captain. And he'd been with the government for the past about almost 20 years now. So what actually happened was, I grew up in an environment where I was always,
Sorry, Arnavi. I
yep, is okay. I'm sorry. I think you lost me for a second.
Yeah.
So like I was saying, basically, I grew up in an environment where every single day we would talk about some or the other, dispute which probably is being faced. Maybe, I don't know, something that my dad's going through in office, or a vessel registration dispute, or exactly what goes wrong in the hull of a vessel. So I basically grew up knowing about ships. And what was very interesting was he wasn't just talking about India. He was talking about places like Liberia. He was talking about places like Panama. And he was talking about places like the UK. So for me, it was very global. And that's how I decided, okay, maybe maritime is a good field to probably try out. And that's what led to my LLM in maritime law. And I've never looked back after that.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
So I was saying that while you were actually studying law, you were very clear that you were going to be a maritime lawyer. Is that the case?
Well, I wasn't very clear until the third year of my law school, because in the third year I did an internship at Crawford Bailey, and actually I started my internship in the second year. And when I finally got through my internship in the third year as well, um, that's when I had a bit of clarity that this is what I want to do. Because maritime law, while it's very interesting, is also very complex, especially because it's a lot of litigation, and you have to understand very fundamental concepts of contract. And that was something that was more clear to me as I finished second and third year, when I got a lot more clear on concepts like subrogation, concepts like termination, rescission. um, and what's very interesting now, you know after having graduated and done my studies, is to see how to actually apply these concepts which you study in books in reality. And that's how I got a little clear from, let's say, the third and fourth year to actually pursue maritime as the field that I want to be in.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible now.
So once you decided to actually, become a maritime lawyer, what was your immediate steps that you could take? Are there certain subjects that you focus on? I understand you did an LLM also on maritime laws,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
apart from that, what else? Like if somebody, let's say, I am a law student in my second year or
Hmm.
third year, and I decide that okay, I want to be a maritime lawyer going ahead. Okay,
Right.
what could be my
Right.
Like, what should I start doing?
Well, to be honest, I'll tell you what, maritime is very different as compared to a lot of other fields. Chiefly because in maritime by itself is a whole different world. So when you have, when you're trying to venture into maritime, there are certain concepts that you need to understand on admiralty jurisdiction in general. Unfortunately or fortunately, the way our courses are structured in India, you do not learn anything which is remotely related to admiralty, except for, let's say, a bit of contract. And what happens in shipping, at least, is you need to understand these concepts of admiralty to understand why is it so important to be focusing on, let's say, something like a vessel mortgage. Why is it so important that people on board the vessel actually get paid their dues on time? And how exactly does a vessel constitute as property? Now, these are things that you will not learn in law school because these are independent subjects by itself, which you learn in your LLM. Now, of course, as a second year law student, of course, I don't mean to discourage, but as a second year law student, what you would want to do, ideally, if you want to get a bit of a flavor of shipping, the best way to actually learn it is by going and interning at a law firm, especially the very niche law firms that you already have in India. I think in Bombay we have at least four of them who are doing only shipping. Um, there are quite a few in Cochin as well, um, and that should be a first stepping stone. Now, what's very interesting is all of these law firms, yes, it might be, of course, difficult to secure an internship, but because they have a very, they're very niche and they've got a very, compact and a very experienced department, you're going to learn a lot about these concepts. You're going to understand how exactly concepts of admiralty are applied and what these concepts are. And the best part is you're going to learn about litigation more than anything that you've probably learned in any of your other internships where you're probably doing due diligence work. You will go to court, you will see hearings, you will witness hearings, you will actually see how court functions, how papers are filed. And I think that's the most interesting part as an intern. And that's something that really, really, encourages you to come into the field.
So, what, according to you, are the best shipping law firms in India? Like, from two perspectives, obviously, people will look forward to working in these places, and apart from that, also for interning. What would you say
Right.
of 5 or 6 law firms?
Well, to be honest, I don't think I can mention 5 or 6 law firms because that's a lot even for shipping. Shipping, unfortunately, is very limited in India for the vast coastline that we have. And I would hate to take names and leave out the ones that I don't remember. But if I had to take names, of course, I would definitely recommend Crawford Bailey because I've worked there. Um, there's so much to learn from the partner over there, Mr. Asher. He is a brilliant mentor. Of course, you have Bose and Mitra, which is the biggest shipping law firm in India. Again, the managing partner, Mr. Raja Majumdar, is very, very, very learned. His experience in not only litigation but also in arbitration is very, very vast. His team of lawyers that he actually has, they're all either LLM from Southampton or from NUS, much like me. Of course, I have friends over there as well. Then we have Bruce Chambers, which also is run by Dr. Shrikant Hatti. He is again very, very learned. There are a lot of publications. In Kochi, you have VJ Matthew, which is of course again an international shipping law firm. So yeah, you have about 4 or 5 different options. I trust Mullah and Mullah used to do shipping as well, but I'm not very sure if they're still around. But Mr. Thacker in Mullah and Mullah is also a very good mentor. The only problem with shipping is you need to know who to approach, and you need to know the select law firms to approach. But fortunately, I see that on iPleaders and on Super Lawyers, you guys are definitely picking up these few shipping lawyers, and
We will
you're
love
getting
to
a lot of
more interview
recommendations.
more of them if you can recommend and introduce them to us, because we don't know so much about the shipping world, but the few people
Right.
who try to share the information with students.
Okay, you could, I think if you can just honestly, go to the website of any of let's say even Bose and Mitra, you'll find a lot of people around. You'll be able to see their associates. It's not very difficult. All you need to do is literally just go to LinkedIn. I would hate to take names. I would love and hate to take names, because I think while I would recommend a few, I would probably miss out the others, and I don't want to build any animosity. But all you have to literally do is just check out places like Chambers and Partners. Check out places like HG Law, where you actually have all of these law firms listed. Get on LinkedIn, check out who the associates are on these firms, and there you have your recommendations.
Okay, great. Why don't you tell us a little about there are a few other firms that we have heard of, like I had heard of Venkateshwaran and Chambers of George Revello.
Yes.
I think people frequently
Right.
in these places also. So could you
Right.
tell, are these like the tier two law firms in shipping law or something like that?
Right. No, there's actually a difference. When we're talking about the chambers and when we're talking about law firms, we're talking about two completely different things. When you have chamber practice, of course, that means you are actually practicing in court. You're going and you're appearing for your client, or maybe you're being instructed by a law firm to go and appear. Of course, I've worked, I worked with both the chambers now. When I was in Crawford Bailey, I would be representing clients against the said chambers, and now as in-house myself, I instruct chambers, I instruct lawyers, and instruct these chambers. Of course, you have the chamber of Mr. George Rubello, and he again has. I think in the chamber you have about 4 or 5 different litigators who are also very, very experienced, who are very, very knowledgeable. And then you also have, I believe you have Zarir Barucha and Associates. Uh, you do have quite a few who are actually doing good chamber practice. Then you have the chambers of Mr. Venkatesh Dhond. Also, he specializes in Admiralty. Um, yeah, there's quite a few, to be honest. But chamber practice is essentially if somebody wants to litigate. Ideally, not many people walk into litigation fresh out of law school, because, and of course, this is a personal view. I would think that to litigate, you need to understand the jurisprudence behind the law before you go and argue for your client. And maritime is not the easiest field to be going and arguing jurisprudence on. So it's always better to be at a law firm first, understand the concept of admiralty, see how these things function, see how the courts function. We only have 2 judges in the Bombay High Court who actually listen to admiralty matters. Make yourself known, familiarize yourself with the procedure of the court, and then go into litigation, then go into the chambers. That would be my advice.
So can you tell us a little about we have been hearing you, and we have heard this elsewhere. We know very little about this area of practice. We keep hearing
Mhm.
words like admiralty, shipping law, and then
Right.
maritime law. Are these all the same thing, or different, like synonyms, or these are
No,
different?
they're actually all the same thing. It's just synonymous. The reason you have maritime law and you have admiralty law and you have shipping law, essentially it's all about, it's about admiralty law stems from the concept of the Code of Admirals, which existed in the English court system back in the 1800s. And then, of course, when you talk about maritime, you talk about the sector in general, which is the marine sector. Now, of course, you have 2 kinds of shipping disputes. You have shipping disputes on the wet side, and you have shipping disputes on the dry side. So when I talk about wet side shipping disputes, this is usually all the fun, really cool stuff where you're talking about vessel collisions, which is very, very interesting. And then when I'm talking about dry disputes, it's probably going to be contractual disputes, like let's say, a sale purchase of a vessel, maybe some kind of a cargo claim where one cargo owner is basically shipping goods on board a vessel somewhere else. So maybe a claim of an owner against the person who's hiring the vessel, that's the charterer. Maybe a claim of the cargo owner against a ship owner for some kind of negligence. So that's broadly the two sides of shipping or maritime law in general, the dry and the wet side. In India, of course, you have a lot of litigation on chiefly the dry side, because on the wet side, usually a lot of these cases just get referred to, arbitration in London or in Singapore, but chiefly in London because that's usually how the contracts are structured. But essentially, long story short, Admiralty, shipping, and maritime are all the same. Of course, you have you have the basic concepts of Admiralty law, which are a little different because that talks about apportionment of property, about how a vessel is actually classified as an individual island floating on sea, and how a vessel's nationality is actually recorded. What are these registration certificates that she needs to have? What are these safety certificates that she needs to have? What is the minimum number of crew she needs to have on board? What kind of a vessel should she be? And the pollution regulations are so strong, especially when it comes to oil spills, because a lot of these vessels are having marine fuel oil, marine gas oil, and this is hazardous in nature. So there's an oil spill. Classic example, I think, was the BP oil spill a couple of years back. You're talking about drilling units. How do you mitigate stuff like that? So these are regulatory aspects which kind of makes the maritime field in itself a very, very unique field, much like most of the other fields. But the interesting part is it is not very different as compared to any other commercial contract either, because you always have these contracts of sale and purchase. You have these contracts of carriage, right? You have these contracts of sale of goods. And your underlying terms are basically nothing but general principles of contract law. Your underlying terms, even in Admiralty, are basically general principles of negligence, tort law. So it's a brilliant field which combines commercial laws in general with contract and tort being the underlying laws, and builds up with general principles of Admiralty which are quite unique. So it's a beautiful amalgamation of the two. And then you throw in a dash of international law because you have a bunch of conventions. And voila, you have, you can go anywhere you want with this particular field.
So you also have the international law of the seas, but that is something that I guess shipping lawyers don't deal much with. Is it something that governments deal with more frequently, or?
To be honest, I would say yes. Again, you kind of divest that. What I deal with, or what a lot of companies deal with, is the commercial aspect of the law. So, of course, this is the dry and wet side of shipping. But when you're looking at the international law of seas, that's the UNCLOS convention. That is chiefly, yes, it talks about demarcation of territorial boundaries. It talks about continental shelves. That is usually a matter of dispute between nations. A classic example of that is, what's actually happening in the South China Sea right now between China and Philippines. That's very interesting, but that's when the UNCLOS actually comes into picture, yes.
So, if I like one thing that all, young lawyers and law students want to know, if they want to get into maritime laws or shipping law practice, whether in a law firm or even in chamber practice, how would you compare what people earn with other areas of practice?
Well, to be honest, chamber practice in general depends from court to court, from what I understand, because when you start out as a junior, it depends on what your senior is willing to pay you. And in the Bombay High Court, the scene that I am aware of course, I might be completely, I might be a bit dated because I've been abroad for the past about almost 2 years now. But in the Bombay High Court, you have to fetch your own clients. So it gets a little difficult when you are getting into chamber practice. Of course, the gestation period is a lot more as compared to a law firm. But the law firm pay scales are not bad. Of course, it's definitely not going to pay you, it may not pay you as much as, let's say, somebody who's getting into mergers and acquisitions, maybe, or banking and finance immediately. But I will say this, that the more clients you bring in, the more cases you do, of course, the more you're going to earn. And given that it is such a niche field, it's actually easier to be setting up your career if you're getting into Admiralty. And the beauty of Admiralty is that in India, if you are, in a law firm which it has a lot of foreign clients, and when I talk about foreign clients, it's chiefly going to be all the major foreign law firms, because, like, in India, foreign law firms are not allowed to be setting up shop. But if you're looking at, things in that perspective, you're going to be in contact with a lot of different foreign law firms, build up your career, build up your CV a lot faster, in the field of shipping than you probably will in any other field, because your exposure is a lot more.
Are you saying
You'll be dealing with
in the long term this kind of evens out, like like even if somebody earns more money initially in M&A, in case of shipping, then you might be earning as much or more eventually? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is, in the long term, if you are getting into shipping, you must think of getting into it for the long term. That's exactly what I'm saying. I wouldn't say that this is a great stopgap. I wouldn't say, just venture into it and then get out of it. You've got to have an appetite for shipping, because shipping, again, is a field which requires a gestation period.
So this is a
It's a
long-term
great place
career,
to be
basically.
building your. Sorry?
So this is a long-term career. Like, it's something that if
This
you
is a
have
long-term
a
career.
passion for it, you're going to pursue it for a long time, it makes sense. But it doesn't make
Yes.
so much sense if you are going to, like, a lot of people do M&A for 2-3 years and then practice
Yeah.
something quite common. Or
Yes, because at the end of the day, I would think that M&A is something that you could probably merge with different areas of corporate law, but Admiralty in itself is a world in itself. So maybe what you're learning in regulatory shipping is not something that you will ever be able to apply in banking and finance. It's not something that you will ever be able to apply, in M&A. It will not be something that you can possibly apply in corporate structuring. So shipping is, yes, it's definitely a long-term investment, but it's a great long-term investment. I would think that your career progression will be a lot faster in shipping, because you'll probably be dealing on an everyday basis with the Allen and Overys and the Holman Phoenix and the Clifford Chance or the Clyde Co, the Insco of the world, which is brilliant. The kind of exposure you get is one of a kind.
wow, that sounds really wonderful. I'm sure many law students and lawyers will be really looking forward to that kind of experience.
Yeah. It sounds very flamboyant. It's very glamorous, but it also requires a lot of long hours. It's a very, I keep saying this, it's a very dynamic industry. Of course, you can expect calls at 2 o'clock in the morning if you're in-house, like I do, unfortunately, because somewhere at some part of the world, somebody is buying a vessel, somebody is selling a vessel. There is some kind of a collision.
And
You
this
have
is
to
always
always be on your toe.
never stops. The work never stops in shipping, I guess.
Work never stops in shipping. No, it doesn't.
There is no bad season. There is no like bad timing for shipping.
There is no bad timing for a shipping lawyer. Though I think a lot of lawyers may now disagree, because the industry has been in a bit of a slump. But we're picking up. Of course, with in-house, a lot of different organizations are becoming more and more conversant with compliance. From what I am seeing, there's been a general drop in the number of vessel arrests. People are trying to avoid disputes. which can only be a good thing for an in-house counsel because our work increases. But there has been a lot of change in compliance and regulation in general in the shipping industry. And for an in-house shipping lawyer, the work definitely never stops. Also, with the different sanctions that we are now having, especially in view of what's happening in the US right now, with Iranian sanctions coming up, it significantly affects shipping in general because it affects the entire, tanker market in the shipping industry. And there are a lot of vessels which are actually tankers and carry this kind of crude oil. So that's a very interesting development as well.
Tell us more about arrest of ship. This is, we have heard this like a big adventure, and like some like really crazy things happen, and a lot of money is made very quickly. So tell us more about this arrest of ship.
Arrest of ships. Okay. This sounds very glamorous. The first time I was talking about arrest of a vessel to a friend of mine who was a layman, he couldn't understand how you would arrest an entire vessel. Like how exactly would you arrest it? Because our concept of arrest is basically somebody going and putting chains on your hand and taking you to a jail. But what happens with ships, like I said, the way ships are categorized as property is very unique, and that's what makes Admiralty very unique. We usually follow the arrest convention. That brings up the flavor of the international conventions which are followed in shipping. Now there are a list of claims, and there are a list of claims which, if they are not fulfilled, constitute as something as lien. The arrest convention basically lays out what are the different heads of claim under which, let's say, a debtor or a creditor of a vessel can actually arrest the vessel if there is any existing debt that he has from the owner of the vessel. So that's usually called a claim in rem, which is against the vessel. Now, what happens is when the vessel is arrested, we make an arrest application in court. You have to prove to the court that, yes, this is a claim which is admissible under the arrest convention. In India, unfortunately, this has now been enacted by way of the Admiralty Act, which came into force last year. And under the Admiralty Act, it's similar to the arrest convention. It lays down all the different heads of claim. So in a court, you have to, of course, file an application for arrest of the vessel, which is usually done in the original side of the Bombay High Court. And you have to justify to the court what exactly your dues are. Why has there been a contractual breach? Essentially, everything is just usually about a contractual breach. You have to justify to the court that, okay, this is a head of claim which is covered under the Admiralty Act or previously the arrest convention. I have sufficient jurisdiction to show that the person who is actually owning the vessel is the person who owes me my money. So what happens is you arrest the vessel, and the claim in rem becomes a claim in personam that is against the owner of the vessel when the owner actually enters appearance. Now, why does the owner have to enter appearance? Because the longer a vessel is arrested, the longer the people who are interested in the vessel are actually losing money. Now, always remember one thing. Let's say I buy a vessel as a ship owner. I'm going to charter her out to somebody who actually wants to use her, right? And these charters are nothing but basically hiring of a vessel. The person who's hiring the vessel is paying to the tune of $10,000 or $12,000 per day for the vessel. So the longer the vessel remains arrested, arrest basically means the vessel is not allowed to leave port. So the longer the vessel remains arrested in that particular place, the more the person is paying anyway. And the losses that he has, they keep increasing. So the owner has to put up something called security, which means that, let's say if my claim is for $200,000, I've arrested the vessel for $200,000, the owner has to put up a bank guarantee for $200,000 so the vessel can be released from arrest. And then, of course, litigation continues. But essentially, a vessel is arrested when there is an existing claim against the vessel or against the owner, which has not been fulfilled.
Okay.
And long story short, we do a lot of arrests in India. India is a very, very good place to be doing arrest. It's considered an arrest-friendly jurisdiction. But But of course now, usually previously there was a bit of a gap in how different courts would actually interpret different claims. What would be a lien? What would be a claim? The difference between a claim and a lien basically is that even if the vessel changes ownership, a lien remains. That would probably be something for crew wages. But the moment a vessel is sold to somebody else, a claim, let's say for the fuel supplied to the vessel, that no longer exists. So it boils down to, at the end of the day, the concept, the contractual concept of privity of contract.
So that's a lot of contract law, and you had told us, like, so I
Yeah.
think this is one area where uh, you all the concepts you learn in law school about different legal concepts related to contract law all actually used, because we don't see it used anywhere
Absolutely.
in reality.
Absolutely. In fact, what's very interesting is, just I think last week I was, brainstorming with one of our external lawyers in the UK about termination of a contract. Just how one line can be interpreted as termination of a contract, and what are the consequences that flow out of termination. That if I am the party who's terminating the contract, how I am responsible for paying damages, when in fact I could have just let the other party terminate the contract because there was non-performance. And these are things that you will probably never, see it, like you never understand the impact it has in law school. But when you actually see it being applied, it's very interesting.
Okay. So, if somebody wants to become a shipping lawyer, maritime lawyer, what are the
Yeah.
career options? One, you have told us about, they can go and work in a shipping law firm, they
Right.
can work in a chamber as a litigator, eventually, maybe after
Right.
some experience. What are the other options?
Right. The other options that you always have is definitely to go in-house with a shipping company. Another option that you also have is actually to join one of the P&I clubs. P&I club is basically a protection and indemnity club. This is nothing but shipping insurance, to be honest. Now, insurance and shipping there's two kinds of insurances. One kind of insurance which basically goes ahead and
Hello. You're frozen. Hello. What happened? Hello. Arnavi, can you hear me? Hello. Hello. Now I can hear you a little, but I think you have disappeared. Can you can you hear me? Hello. Hello. Now I Arnavi, can you hear me? Hello. Hello. Anyway, I think we have lost Arnavi now again, and she had joined this session from Dubai, and there seems to be some problem with the internet. I have no idea what it is, but it was a really enlightening session while it lasted. And thank you for watching and joining us today evening despite the enormous delay. And I'm again sorry for the complete failure of this like, while it was a really great session, I really wanted to hear all that I could learn from Arnavi, but unfortunately we'll have to end it here. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to definitely do some more session with Arnavi another time. Thank you very much. Take care.
think I lost you.
Oh, Arnavi, you are back. Okay, I
I
was
am. I'm sorry.
no
It's a
problem.
strange country to be in.
Sorry.
I said UAE is a strange country to be in.
Yeah.
There are days where you have absolutely brilliant internet connection, and there are days where you just don't understand what went wrong.
No problem. I was actually kind of sadly announcing the end of the session, but now that you're back, we'll take the opportunity to ask you a couple of
Well,
more questions. So, okay, so
sure.
I wanted to ask you, like you were telling us about opportunities for
Right,
in-house
right,
opportunities to exist for lawyers. So, can you tell a little more
right.
about
Right. I'm sorry. I think before my internet connection dropped me very unceremoniously, I think I was talking about protection and indemnity clubs and insurance in general.
yes, yes,
So shipping insurance, there's two kinds of insurances that you can have. One you have which actually insures the actual value of the vessel, right? Like the steel structure of the vessel, the machinery of the vessel. That's hull and machinery insurance. And then you have something called the P&I insurance, which is the protection and indemnity insurance. If you recall, I just told a couple of minutes back about, oil pollution, cargo claims, arrest of vessels, right? Now, all of this at the end of the day has to be insured. A vessel has to be insured. And the money at stake is at least a few hundreds of millions of dollars. So the two kinds of insurances that you have at the end of the day are dealt with by very specialist insurance brokers. Now, these brokers are actually brokers in the Lloyd's London market, which is why you have the Lloyd's of London, which is, so very famous. Of course, now if you are an insurance broking house and you are doing, hull and machinery insurance and protection and indemnity insurance, the liability that you're taking of hundreds and millions of dollars is essentially something that needs to be vetted by a legal team. And this is where you have marine insurance specialist lawyers.
okay,
So one of the other options that you also have is to actually join, the claims department of an insurance broking house, or join the legal department of a P&I club, which gives a lot of these protection and indemnity insurances. So the kind of the avenues that you have, of course, in shipping is either you can go to a law firm, be a solicitor or be a litigator. Do your chamber practice and be a litigator. That's the second option. The third one, of course, is to go, to be a marine insurance lawyer, either with a protection and indemnity club or let's say an insurance broking house. And the fourth option, of course, is to, join a shipping company in general. That would probably be the Maersks of the world, or the CMA CGMs of the world, or the MSCs of the world, or get into cash buying like me and join global marketing systems and look into scrap vessels. So yeah, that's always, so there's four different options that you can actually have.
okay. That's great. So, what do you currently do at your current job? If you can tell us a little more about how your day looks like and what kind of things you get to do.
Right. My day basically starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, and on a good day, it ends at 9 o'clock at night. But what I currently do in the company that I work with Global Marketing Systems, who is basically the world's largest cash buyer of vessels. When I say cash buying, it's basically, buying vessels which are over 25 or 30 years old, which are significantly antique, which need to be demolished. We basically take them and get them recycled in the few of the biggest recycling yards. And interestingly, Alang in India, recycles about 85% of the world's vessels. So I basically work with the legal department. My job is actually twofold. I look at the compliance and regulatory aspect of every single contract, and I also look into the dispute resolution aspect of whatever disputes arise. Fortunately, in the last 2.5 years, we haven't had a lot of disputes. And this is primarily because what we do internally is we vet our contracts. We do at least 300 vessels. We purchase at least 300 vessels in a year. And every single contract is a contract which is vetted by the legal department. So every contract, before it is signed and executed, the contractual terms, what are the unfavorable contractual terms? What is the evidence that you will possibly need to be, reselling your ship? That is what I look at. If there is any risk, which is involved in the entire contract, that is something that I highlight to my procurement department. If there is any risk when it comes to signing operational contracts, let's say for hiring a tow, which pulls a vessel into the yard, or let's say which pulls a vessel from one destination to the other. You have very specialized BIMCO contracts called towcons. I look at those contracts. I try to get those contracts amended. And of course, there are days where I have to speak with the external lawyers of my counterparty and try to reason with them and get negotiate a favorable contractual term. Most of my day goes in contractual negotiation, working with my procurement department, working with my operations department. And then, of course, there are weeks where I'm looking at dispute resolution on legacy cases, where we are, let's say, buying a vessel, and then, of course, our counterparty is not the most reliable counterparty, because as a growing business, which is very aggressively expanding in the Middle East, there is a lot of significant risk that comes with it. We are now dealing with jurisdictions like Yemen, like Saudi, with jurisdictions like even Indonesia, for that matter. It's very difficult to know which counterparty is actually reliable. What can you do in the event that you pay your deposit money, but you never see your vessel? Your vessel never gets delivered to you, and the deposit money that you're losing it is at least a few millions of dollars. That's when your dispute resolution steps in. That's when you think of initiating arbitration. Like right now, we're in the middle of 3 arbitrations, one of which is actually almost close to completion. And these are all, London maritime arbitrations. There's another one which is ongoing in Singapore. There is an insurance arbitration which is ongoing, and we are almost halfway through. So there's the dispute resolution aspect of it, which I look at as well. And then in addition to that, we have a couple of vessel arrest claims in India. So, you have to keep pushing your lawyers in India and try to see what exactly, the court is passing orders on. So it's a mix of compliance and regulatory and dispute resolution that I do on a daily basis.
So that sounds very like quite an interesting array of work. We have got a
Yes.
number of questions from the viewers. Let's
Ah,
ask a few of them. So one question we
sure.
have from Rahul Varma. I am giving my final same of LLB and ex-master mariner and DPA of a company for last 12 years. Is it beneficial to do LLM for me?
Well, it depends. As a master mariner finishing your LLB, to be honest, you can actually go to a law firm and even start working with a law firm as a specialist consultant. You can work with, let's say, an average adjusting company and work with as a specialist consultant there, because each of these firms, each of these organizations really value the technical expertise that a master mariner can get. That is definitely not something that me as a lawyer can advise, because even when I'm drafting my claim statement, to be very honest, what would be what would be very helpful for you to do is actually maybe try to get a specialist course in, let's say, insurance, because a lot of these broking houses rely extensively on master mariners for the technical expertise on actually assisting on filing the entire claim. Now, that is not something that even I understand, and I have to constantly run to my operations department to actually understand how to file my claim. So I think you may want to look at a specialist course, given that you're already finishing your LLB. Already have a general understanding of how shipping works. Maybe a specialist course in, let's say, maritime arbitration. That would be very helpful. Of course, as an alumna of NUS offers these courses. You might want to look into that.
Interestingly, like recently, I heard at least 2 vice chancellors in India saying that they are going to start courses around maritime laws and marine insurance. One, in fact, in
Yes.
Vizag and another in Mumbai. So let's look forward to those. I won't take the name of the.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd say fingers crossed. It's about time that we actually develop some good maritime law in India, because we have such a vast coastline.
Yeah. So, one another question we have is: are diplomas from institutes helpful in the future? I mean, I think there are a lot of questions regarding this. Institutes such as
Okay.
JNU Gandhinagar or Narottam Morarji Institute of Shipping. So, are these like diplomas are any helpful? That's the question.
Diplomas actually are helpful. To be honest, diploma is not, it can never substitute a degree. This is my personal view, of course, but it depends on the reason for you doing the diploma. Are you trying to add that to your already existing portfolio? Because yes, then that makes sense. But always remember one thing, that even if you're collecting all these different feathers in your cap, you need to be able to demonstrate that you can apply whatever you're learning in your diploma. You have to supplement your diploma with some kind of experience. So if you're doing a diploma, please make sure that you're doing something that is applicable to your I think you've muted yourself. I can't really hear you.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you're audible now.
Yes, yes. We lost you for a minute or so. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Oh no, we lost you again. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. So I don't think this is working. Okay. So as I was saying that about internships that one can possibly do. So I had interned with Ashwin Shankar, who's a basically a shipping law arbitration. His practice is mostly around shipping arbitration in Mumbai. And I remember what he told me. He was a graduate of National Law School, Bangalore. And in his second year, he discovered about shipping law and he decided that he wants to be a shipping lawyer. From that year, his every internship was with only shipping lawyers. And every time, even he had to write a project, he would always write it around shipping law. So, if it is insurance, then he'll write around marine insurance. If he's studying, maybe criminal law, he will talk about uh, crime on board of a ship, on board a vessel, and everywhere he'll just kept working on that. I think that kind of single-minded focus is needed to pursue something as complicated and a difficult area as such, like shipping law. We have a few more questions. Uh, does college name matter for law firms to select interns in this field? So again, like I would say that college name to an extent, if you're good, if let's say you are from Harvard or you are from National Law School Bangalore or you are from Oxford, of course these kind of things do matter a lot in terms of a good CV. But these are not absolutely like mandatory to have these. Achha, I think we have Arnavi back online. Arnavi, can you hear me?
Yes, I don't. I mean, did you lose me again?
Yeah, I lost you for a good 2 minutes, and now you just came back. Okay, we still can't hear you. Hi, Arnavi, are you there? No, I don't think we can hear her. So, okay, so I'll try to answer the question to the best of my abilities. And okay, so basically, the college name matters to an extent, but it's not everything definitely, because if you have the skills, if you have the knowledge, then you will get an opportunity, because it's a small area of practice, and it is not that there are tons and tons of people clamoring to get into shipping law. That is not the case. There are only few people who are passionate and interested in shipping law. They are trying to get in. To be honest, there are a lot of Indian lawyers who go abroad and learn shipping law. They do LLM in shipping law, and then they cannot actually enter the field because of the lawyers who are I know many such lawyers who have joined a shipping law course and eventually have not succeeded in building a career around shipping law. So you must be prepared to put in the work, put in the effort, and the time that is needed to make a career happen in shipping law. Okay, we have another question. Okay, what is your day as a maritime lawyer? Already we have had it. The question is answered. What would you better for me, farm or chamber, with my last 25 years of operation experience, ship and ashore? So Rahul Varma, your question I think has already been answered. According to Arnavi, your best chances are at a P&I club where, or even in a shipping company where you can perhaps advise them on practical aspects of shipping. So I think we have covered most of the questions. The rest of the questions are more or less repetitions. So I will skip this. Okay, thank you everybody for joining in, and we have unfortunately could not say bye to Arnavi. The line has dropped off, and I was waiting if she could join back, but so far we have not succeeded. So let us end this here, and thank you for joining us. We hope you join us again for our future talks, and we hope to talk about marine laws and maritime law and shipping law very soon again. Thank you very much, and have a great weekend. Thank you. Bye.